Edward Little Marching Band, a sometimes underestimated gem within the large history of Auburn. The true beginning of the marching band is unidentified, but the class of 1928 showed a new beginning.
Under what looked like a dark year for the band proved to be very bright. The class of 28, under the supervision of director Mr. Pitcher, created a band that had more than equaled and upheld the standards set by Edward Little High School,
said the Oracle of 28. The marching band, beginning with a rocky start, finally started to take off within the halls of Edward Little. But first, what is a marching band? The definition of a marching band states that, quote, a marching band is a group in which instrumental musicians perform while marching, often for entertainment or competition. Instrumentation typically includes brass, woodwind, and percussion instruments. But I believe it to be more than that. With millions of college, high school, military, and more different types of marching bands around the world, you would think that it would be hard to describe it in just 26 words. Well, I am here to expand that definition and give you just a little bit more of our history and just a little bit of one of the things that I live for, the Edward Little Marching Band. Back in the 1920s, Edward Little was very proud of their marching band. Under the supervision of Mr. E.S. Pitcher, both boys and girls were able to compete every year in the State of Maine School Band Contest, which was composed of some of the best bands in the state. Even with the new wing being built, the band was still able to participate in rehearsals every Wednesday from 2 to 3 p.m. After the new wing was built, the marching band was able to expand a little bit. They were even able to send 3 of their members, James Oliver, Nelson Record, and Russell Gilman, to play in the State of Maine Band before the Assembly of the Teachers' Convention in the fall. The EL Band was able to maintain the standards set by the bands and the school in the past and has continued to do so throughout the years. Besides giving its members a chance to get together, the band had played in public a good deal in the 1930s. The past year, about 1930 to 1931-ish, the band had been able to start furnishing football games with that color that was so desired. In May the same year, the EL Marching Band was one of the music clubs that was able to appear in the Jordan High Edward Little Joint musical. Not soon after that, the marching band started to be described as one of the most active clubs in the school. During football season, the marching band, dressed in good old red and white, would march to all of the games to show their school spirit. The band, under the leadership of the new band director, Mr. Russell Gilman, a former student and band kid, had also started to play at several assemblies and had furnished stirring music for the rallies.
These young musicians show promise, and the work of this group compares favorably with other similar institutions in the state.
EL Oracle. In 1934, it is said that the band had enjoyed one of its most successful seasons under the new leadership of the new director, Mr. Jack. Through his untiring efforts, the school soon had a band to be even more proud of. Through its said snappy appearance at football games, the band had received much praise from the school that year.
We truly feel that this has upheld the record of Edward Little's previous bands, and hope that the work may be kept up.
EL Oracle. Although the band was slowly getting smaller throughout the years, it was still a tiny highlight of Edward Little. Sadly, with the shrinking number of the marching band students, the Edward Little Oracle of 1936 said, quote,
the dull showing of a band in a school of our size is shameful.
In that dark period, the marching band was greatly helped by Webster Junior High, as in the old middle school. But to everyone's dismay, the marching band and the concert band was discontinued because of lack of support in 1937. But just 1 year later, things started to look up for the band. First of all, there was a band again, and the amount of band students was restored to about double its size. They also started to play at football games again. The band, miraculously, in just 1 year, increased its members from 38 to 76. Thanks to many, many band parents, they were also able to raise enough funds to buy the whole marching band new uniforms. They made their first appearance in these new uniforms at an Edward Little football game. The huge improvements to the band that year were all because of the tireless efforts of director Mr. Jack and the new drill master Mr. Morin. That same year, the marching band was able to compete in their first competition in front of judges. In 1940, when drill master Mr. Morin began to train the group in the fall, he thought it would aid the band's overall formation if a few girls from one of his other teams called Golden Arrows Drill Team came out and marched with them too. This idea worked out so well that they eventually got 6 girls from EL to do the same thing and march with the band in all of the parades. In 1941, the band competed in a lot of competitions around New England. Because of the fact that America was at war at around this time, many of competitions had to be canceled because there was a tire shortage and they couldn't get buses. Immediately after, everybody began to ask, "But what can we do?" But there was plenty they could do locally, like football games, pageants, outings, and other type of musicals activities. So, in spite of setbacks, the band had gone into a very successful year. In 1943, disaster struck. Within the chaos, the marching band began to do its part for the school, continuing to pep up the crowd at football games and playing music at assemblies. The school soon settled. In 1946, the marching band marched for the first time in the Memorial Day Parade, all thanks to Mr. Donald M. Gay, the band director. Flash forward to 1952, 2 weeks before the opening of school, 160 band members met at Walton Field for their first drill. This year, the Edward Little Marching Band had the honor of being invited to represent the state of Maine at the annual Cherry Blossom Festival in Washington, D.C. The band prepared for the trip to Washington with drills at Bates College Fieldhouse and at the Lewiston Auburn Airport under the leadership of Mr. Morin. The trip included tours of Radio City, New York, and the U.S. Naval Academy at Annapolis, Maryland. The band proudly took second place at the Cherry Blossom Festival. In 1954, to bring all of the year's activities from performing at many competitions, festivals, and football games, the marching band had traveled in June to Fenway Park in Boston to march during the interval preceding in the second game of a Red Sox doubleheader. 1955 was the first, last, and only year the yearbook was to feature a small picture of the EL band at the very front. One, two, three, four. Once again, the ELHS marching band started down Walton Field for the 1956 to 1957 drilling season. New music to memorize, new drills, new steps, making the school even more proud of the marching band. The outstanding performance of the EL marching band was due largely to the efforts of Mr. Gay, their mild director. Looking great in their maroon and white uniforms, the EL marching band marched through their drills and presented their music in what could right be considered the golden age of the marching band, the 1950s. During the month of January 1957, the band went to Buffalo, New York to attend the Music Educators National Conference. The marching band was one of 2 high school groups chosen to attend. The band left school on Wednesday afternoon and spent the first night in West Springfield, Massachusetts, and on Thursday evening they arrived in Buffalo. Friday afternoon they gave their presentation of 4 songs: Field of Color by Bells, Symphonic Suite by Williams, Cuban Fantasy by Kepner, and There's Something About Our High School Marching Band. In February of that year, the band performed in a joint concert in Lynn, Massachusetts with other bands from around the country. In 1960, the marching band got a new director, Mr. Simmons.
Yeah, don't worry, we're not
These past years, the Edward Little Marching Band never had a dull moment. Unlike many activities, the band knows no season. One event came right on the heels of another. Autumn was filled with the sound of music at our football games. Everyone mustered his school spirit with those maroon and white clad men and women marched down the field. In October, the band held its traditional tag days to keep the band's financial spirit as high as its playing spirit. Winter winds failed to cool the music as the band got into full swing at the Christmas concert.
E.L. Oracle. And with a new school comes new uniforms. Each Tuesday and Thursday, the Edward Little Marching Band could be found drilling on the field for upcoming football games. In addition to these practices, there were afternoon drills as well. Upon completion of their season, the musicians retired to the band room where concert rehearsing began again. A couple years later, shrinking in numbers but not in spirit, the Edward Little Marching Band enjoyed another great season with director Alan Simmons. Earlier in the year, the band could be found drilling on the field and shaping the halftime performances at football games. The common question of why don't other towns like Levitt or Lewiston join in so we can have a huge band? Well, it could very well be because of lack of funding, but what if they ever did end up joining, specifically in around the 1950s to the 1960s? The band would probably end up being ginormous, with hundreds of kids maybe even different colored uniforms all in one band. The Oracle of 1968 says that the purpose of the marching band is, quote, to develop musicianship and appreciation of music through performance and study. Yes, I guess you could say that this is right, but I would say otherwise.
I think that the purpose of marching band is not only to provide the place to learn and become a better musician and performer, but also to provide a sense of belonging. At least that's what did it for me.
Anonymous.
Bands have become everything to me. Music, fun, friends, family, and love. It's great.
Anonymous. Flash forward to 1969 when they stopped writing out what the marching band had accomplished that year. But it's okay. There are still plenty of pictures, and as you know what they say, a picture is worth 1,000 words. Flash forward to 1983, the Edward Little Marching Band had a very busy year. They started practicing in August to get prepared for their performances at football games and parades. They performed at many concerts, including ones on Veterans Day and Memorial Day. There was a Christmas concert in December, a pop concert in March, and a spring concert in May. They also performed at many festivals and even managed to scrape together an album of all their music. In 1984, under direction of the new director, Mr. Reed, the band had taken a new approach that year. Mr. Reed placed more emphasis on their halftime shows by adding girls with pom-poms and flags to the drills. They also gave several more concerts for the public. The Oracle described the 1985 to 86 season as, quote,
The 1985 to 86 season may not have been a winning season, but it never lacked achievement. The marching band was the first to adjust the new band director, John Neal, and under his patience and careful guidance, the band survived. The marching band consists of more than 100 students, including the color guard, which was able to provide a very colorful and exciting show. The marching band may not have won the awards, but it certainly won the people's hearts.
Even though the band was shorting in numbers, they still had fun, and it still brought happiness to the people, and that's what it's about. Because of budget cuts in a runaway recession in 1992, some activities at EL, including the marching band, were faced with the pay-to-play concept of survival during the school year. Some made it, some did not. Luckily, the marching band was able to stick with it and made it until the next year when they didn't have to do that anymore. Flash forward to the 1996 to 1997 year, the EL Marching Band had yet another successful season. Even with the numbers of kids continuously dropping, the band had captured the best music, best percussion, and second place overall in the Maine Band Directors Association State Championship.
Color guard was fun, challenging, and you get to meet new people.
The numbers slowly drop all across the early 2000s, but never the spirit or the sound of the marching band. They continue to give it their all at competitions and pep up the crowd on football game days. Flash forward a long time to the good old 2017 when one small, 5-foot-tall saxophone player joined the marching band. She, in fact, is the creator of this documentary, and she would like to say that what a marching band is, at least to her, is a family. She, as of now, has only been a part of one season, but boy has it changed her as a person. It showed her that it is okay to be a little different. It is okay to stand out, a little or a lot. And what she'd like to pass on is this. It's okay to be weird or different, but it's not okay to take yourself for granted. And as much as you might think the opposite, there's always a marching band behind you.